Welcome to Sports Talk Live Plus. I'm Sports Director John Scott, joined as always by our insider Vic Carucci. Bills traveling to Denver to face the Broncos in the divisional round Saturday at 4:30. Vic, your initial thoughts on this second round matchup?
Yeah, I think it's remarkable that the Bills find themselves here, but not surprising. Now, why do I say remarkable? Because it is the toughest path you can take to get to the Super Bowl, playing all your games on the road and dealing, and I know we're going to get into all this, dealing with all the adversity that has been hitting this team, frankly, from the very start of the season. But we know it comes with batches of injuries, and that's a prime topic. But they overcome them. And when we saw number 17, Josh Allen, overcome what he had to lead this team to victory against Jacksonville last week, there's a part of me that says maybe that was the biggest hurdle this team would have to climb. I know it's the number one seed they're facing, and it's in Denver, but still there's a big part of me that says, yeah, this is kind of how I thought it would go, and maybe it's, this doesn't look as I don't know, daunting as maybe some people think.
I've said it last week. I'll say it again this week. There is nothing that could happen in this upcoming game that will surprise me, because that's just who this Buffalo Bills team has proven to be this entire season. We're going to get into the matchup in just a bit, plus some thoughts from a Broncos beat reporter from the Denver Post. But first, as we always do, and as you mentioned, the injury report is extensive once again. It's taking up the full screen. Pretty soon we're going to have to do two full screens, Vic, if this thing keeps on rolling how it is. A little different than a normal week, though. Usually for our Thursday show here, it's all kind of guesstimating where these guys are going to land here. But because the week is shorter, they play on Saturday. This is the final one. Max Hairston, Jordan Poyer officially ruled out. Ed Oliver, Terrell Bernard, Damar Hamlin, Ty Johnson, and Curtis Samuel officially listed as questionable. Now here, with Oliver and Hamlin and Samuel, they are currently on injured reserve. Their practice windows are open, so if they are going to be activated and play, some roster moves will have to be made, though the Bills do currently have two open spots. Vic, as you kind of sift through this phone book length of an injury report, what stands out to you?
Yeah, the obvious place is wide receiver, knowing that both Gabe Davis and Terrell Shavers both out for the year with torn ACLs that they suffered against Jacksonville. But on the positive side, knowing that they could get Curtis Samuel back at that position would be huge. And even larger is Ed Oliver, seeing if he can come back, knowing that he's questionable, and knowing that besides that pectoral injury he had, he underwent some knee surgery in between while recovering, because he injured himself in that whole rehab process. Getting him back for this game, massive, if that's the case, John, because you need, this team clearly needs to generate more pressure and generate more in the way of stoutness in the middle. Ed Oliver, not the biggest guy, but a quick penetrator and a force when it comes to not just getting after the quarterback, but dealing with the run game. And I think that one of the big keys of this game is put as much pressure as possible on the young quarterback, Bo Nix, either with pass rush or him feeling the need and the pressure, and Sean Payton feeling the pressure to have him throw a lot.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing. Nothing for Josh Allen. Two back-to-back full participants here. Foot, knee, and right finger all listed on there. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Terrell Bernard. Even if you decide to have him active and play in this game, the way Shaq Thompson has been playing, I think it's more of a nice little boost of an accessory here than a necessity to thrust him right back into the middle linebacker position. Let's go to Oliver in particular here. Bicep injury is what he's coming back from, been out for months. Then, as you said, had a little cleanup surgery for a meniscus thing, suffered as well. It hasn't been that long. I think my initial timeline was saying, hey, if he's coming back at all, it'll be for the Super Bowl if this team makes it. He's ahead of schedule from that timeline here. So the question is it worth it, even in this do-or-die scenario that is the postseason, you think, to bring back Oliver when he was only limited this entire week?
I'm going to go to the line that we keep hearing repeated by Josh Allen, by Sean McDermott, by others, all hands on deck, John. If he can be medically cleared to play, I see no point in trying to hold back with him. You've got to get the win to advance, right? And I don't think there is an opponent, including last week, there is an opponent that they're going to face and potentially face after this game if they win it, where you could say, you save somebody for the Super Bowl. Yeah, that's a nice thought, but they got to get there first. And I think if, Ed Oliver, I'm sure, wants to play, but if the medical folks who are paid to make these tough decisions can say, look, the guy can go out there, play, not do any further damage. Obviously, we don't know, what degree, what level you see from him given the time he's been out. But no, John, I think put him out there if he's ready to go.
I agree, and they run such a heavy rotation that it doesn't necessarily have to be, hey, he's going to play 65, 70, 75% of the snaps, because even though maybe from a bicep and a knee injury standpoint, he's medically cleared, football shape and things like that, he may not be up to snuff, especially in that altitude, to get back to the snap counts we are accustomed to. Maybe a bigger issue here, if we go over to the wide receivers, is because they only have 3 that are currently healthy. That's Khalil Shakir, Brandon Cooks, and Keon Coleman, because they lose Gabe Davis, Tyrell Shavers, both tearing their ACL in Sunday's win over the Jags. Shavers actually playing 22 snaps in that game after tearing his ACL. So here's where they could go. Curtis Samuel, a full participant a few times this week. He could potentially come off of injured reserve. Mecole Hardman is on the practice squad, but I think you look to number 1 as the guy that needs to elevate, Vic, and that's Keon Coleman.
Yeah, he does. This is the make or break moment for Keon Coleman. We are here listening to the way, again, you hear the head coach talk about him. You hear Josh Allen talk about him, making comments about, okay, it looks like he's progressing with maturity and getting it and understanding the responsibility that goes with being a teammate. These are the things that really shouldn't have to be talked about. You would think professionals, they get it and know it. But Keon Coleman has demonstrated that lack of maturity. He's demonstrated the lack of really reliability and to have been disciplined multiple times. The guy who misses meetings, all those things, and then to go out in the field and on the field not necessarily know all his assignments the right, or execute them the right way. This is a big step. Understanding you're in the postseason and he made the big 36-yard catch against Jacksonville. He has got to come back, frankly, with an even bigger game now, given what has happened with injuries at receiver.
Yeah, I think Samuel is ultimately activated and sees the field on Saturday, and I think Coleman will also be in the mix. That's kind of your 4, and they kind of make it work from there. Let's shift gears to the matchup, and we're starting with Denver's defense because, frankly, that's the biggest story here. Jacksonville's defense was ranked towards the top in most categories. So, too, is Denver's defense as well. 2nd in total yards allowed, 2nd against the run, 3rd in points allowed per game. But I want to start here. 68 sacks, Vic, as a team. That is the most by far in the National Football League this season and tied for the 5th most in a single season by a team in NFL history. 72 the number with those elite, illustrious 1984 Bears. It's Nick Bonito, it's Zach Allen, the list goes on, Jonathan Cooper, John Franklin Myers. It's not just one guy, Vic, and they just keep coming at you with unrelenting pressure, and we certainly know Allen dealing with the injuries and the way that this offense has operated with great elite defensive fronts. I think that's where the game will be won or lost.
Yeah, what stands out to me, you talk about 68 sacks that led the league in the 2025 season. This team also led the league last year with 63 sacks. So they get to the quarterback, they get him on the ground. And Josh Allen has been to the ground a career high 40 times, right? The sacks that teams have had against the Bills. And I think therein is something to look at. You've got to, even though only 1 sack was allowed against Jacksonville last week, we know the beating that he took beyond that. And that's where the concern level would be with this offensive line, with the scheming, with the play calling, is do whatever is possible to keep Josh Allen upright. It's not going to be easy, I'm sure. I think about Nick Bonito versus Deion Dawkins. I think of the speed and relentlessness that he has, quickness off the ball. You're going to have to give Deion Dawkins help. I could envision 2 tight ends lining up for most of the game for the Bills offense just to help with that outside protection.
Oh, by the way, Patrick Surtain's in the secondary. He's arguably the best cornerback in the National Football League. Over on the offensive side of things, it all starts and ends with the quarterback. Bo Nix, though, Vic, I would say first season to second season here, you're not seeing the growth that maybe you would hope from a potential franchise guy.
Not at all. He's had a passer rating of under 90 in 8 of his last 9 games. That's troubling to me if you're trying to see a young quarterback develop. I'm not entirely sure Sean Payton is managing him the right way. I think he thinks he's got a younger version of Drew Brees, who Payton coached in New Orleans, and maybe loading him up with too much stuff, too much game planning, too much adjustment. And I think, and we'll see this, that possibility of the team, running out of time at the line of scrimmage, and because he's trying to process things, he does his best work outside the pocket. This could play into the strength of the Bills, who, according to Next Gen Stats, have the league's lowest completion percentage of quarterbacks who go outside the pocket or throw on the run, and that is something Bo Nix does. Yeah,
they really do well confusing young quarterbacks. Nix only in year 2. He doesn't have the best, most elite group of weapons to throw the football to. He does have Cortland Sutton, a true number 1, 2 straight years now with 1,000 yards receiving. But beyond that, we're talking about Troy Franklin, Evan Ingram, not the same guy he was in Jacksonville. Marvin Mims is there. I mean, no one really that I think you need to be all that concerned about beating you one-on-one.
No, and I think it's been the hallmark of the Bills' defense, at least this season. Yeah, you can criticize them for how they don't play the run so well, but they get the job done against the pass, and they're doing that through a lot of adversity, through a lot of next man up caused by injuries.
Yeah, and quickly we'll wrap things up with the running game because there's not much to talk about here. R.J. Harvey is a rookie. He's not had a 100-yard game since assuming the responsibilities as the starter since J.K. Dobbins went down. But I do want to use this time as a point to say the Broncos offensive line sports not 1, but 2 first-team All-Pros.
Yeah, and this goes to the point of, we mentioned about Ed Oliver and the rest of that defensive line needing to rotate. I'm not going to pretend to know this stuff, get into the weeds of science, but when you're dealing with altitude, when you're, 5,300 feet, I believe, above sea level where they'll be playing Saturday, exhaustion comes quickly. You get fatigued, which the rule of thumb, especially for visiting teams, is rotate people a lot. So that goes back to having an Ed Oliver available if he can be, but also rotating those D linemen to keep them fresh to deal with that Broncos offensive line.
Yeah, we've seen Sean Tucker is the latest example. Don't take any running back or running game too lightly. The Bills defense has been susceptible to that, even though they have improved. So that's our thoughts on the matchup. Coming up, Vic's chat with the Broncos beat reporter from the Denver Post. You're watching Sports Talk Live Plus. You're on WGRZ Plus. Welcome back to Sports Talk Live Plus. You know the drill by now. It's the time in the show where Vic chats with a beat reporter from the opposing team. So, Vic, tell us who you got from the Broncos side this week.
Yeah, I had a nice opportunity to chat with Troy Renck. He's a columnist, actually, for the Denver Post, but focuses on the Broncos and the NFL. We began our chat because, look, this Bronco team has won 14 games. They're the top seed in the AFC, yet when you take a closer look at them, especially their young quarterback, Bo Nix, and the production offensively, and some of the questions even come up defensively for all the success they have there, are they really as good as their record indicates? Troy, we know that Sean Payton is a coaching disciple of Bill Parcells, and we know that one of Bill Parcells' famous sayings is, "You are what your record says you are." So the Broncos' record, which makes them the top seed, is that what they are?
Listen, Vic, it is a weird team. I mean, I've written about it. They're easier to appreciate than explain. When fans watch, they endure them as much as they enjoy them. It's because they've had offensive issues, not unlike the Eagles, a team you guys saw a few weeks ago. They'll go through stretches of several 3-and-outs. They look like they can't get a first down, let alone a touchdown. And then in the fourth quarter, they've been the best team in terms of point differential. So the way they finish, the clutch gene, especially with Bo Nix, that's why the record is what it is. Combine the great defense with the finishing kick by the offense. They've earned that record, but they live on narrow margins because of the fact they're not capable of running away and hiding offensively.
Let's start with Bo Nix as far as the matchup is concerned. And this was a guy, of course, as a rookie who had so many problems against the Bills in that wild card playoff game last year. How has he developed? Has he developed much since then? And the other point is, what do you see the Bills doing defensively or what the Broncos have to do offensively to make sure that doesn't repeat itself?
Yeah, listen, Nix, the first part of the season was a bit clunky, if we're being honest. You go to the second half of the Chiefs game at home is when he and Sean Payton finally kind of got in sync, like their Bluetooth connected, if you will, and they started to use the passing game a little more up-tempo. Bo Nix is really comfortable when things are going fast in that regard, but you can't stay in that because it can lead to these 90-second possessions. He's had probably a slightly better year. I don't know that any second-year quarterback in the history has been asked to do more with a playbook, with the line of scrimmage. Sean Payton treats him like Drew Brees light. So there's times where the personnel changes, clog things down, the play comes in late. But when Bo's in tempo, in rhythm, he's really good, and he's really good late. But the issue he runs into is they don't have a lot of premium weapons. I'm not saying it's identical to the Bills, but other than Cortland Sutton, they don't have any elite playmakers. So there's a lot on Nix. I would look for him, Vic, to run more in this game to give them that added element they've really missed since J.K. Dobbins went down with a foot injury in Week 10.
As far as the Broncos defense goes, and that is really the signature of this football team, the pass rush, knowing what Josh Allen can do with his legs, knowing how tough he is to withstand the beating he took against Jacksonville and then still come out on top, your sense of how this pass rush you think can affect Allen?
Well, they'll use that cage rush where you get around him and force him to try to come into the middle and meet up with Zach Allen and DJ Jones. It's just their defense gets pressure. They get hits. They don't get takeaways. They have 68 sacks and 14 takeaways. It's like a mechanic who doesn't drive. You know, a marriage counselor who's never been in a couple. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, Vic. But they're really good. They bend the don't break. They'll give up yards between the 20s. But with Allen, look for the cage rush. Keep him in the pocket. I wouldn't be surprised if they spy him with Dre Greenlaw back healthy. We know Allen's capable of putting a cape on and taking a game over. But the one thing, if I'm a Broncos fan, where I'm concerned, is the things the Bills do well: throwing to the tight ends, throwing to the backs out of the backfield. Those are things that have given the Broncos different problems over the course of this season. Dre Greenlaw coming back could be a real X factor in coverage, both against tight ends and against running backs out of the backfield.
Speaking of takeovers, of course, Bills fans are famous for their ability to go into visiting stadiums and take it over. I don't get the sense that, though, with this Bronco team and its success and the fact that people are obviously very excited there about the prospects of this team going the distance, that's going to happen Sunday. How do you feel about that, A, and B, just the atmosphere of home, the noise, the altitude, all those things that can make things difficult for the visiting opponent?
Yeah, it's just, you have to understand, and you know this history, you've covered football way longer than I have, Vic. They haven't won a playoff game since the year they won Super Bowl 50. It's been a decade since fans have seen a home playoff game. Obviously, they were in the playoffs last year. They lost at Buffalo. I don't sense a lot of fans, paying for their season tickets next year by turning their tickets over to Bills fans because of the fact that it's been a decade. And the home field, Sean Payton has preached for a month, almost mansplaining it, if you will, the importance of screaming, not when they get to the line of scrimmage, but from the moment the play starts to come in, the crowd being hyper. And it's the loudest the crowd's been these last few home games since the AFC Championship game when they beat the Patriots a decade ago. So you're going to see Buffalo fans. They're everywhere. They travel as well as any fan base in the NFL. But you're not going to see them take over this stadium because people have been waiting too long for this. It's been a decade of wandering in the darkness. I just don't see a lot of Broncos country giving up their tickets for this because, as you mentioned, They feel like this team with the right bounces could go to the Super Bowl. This isn't a team where you're like, oh, I'll give up my tickets, they're going to get blown out. They feel like this team could go to the Super Bowl based on how they've won games all year.
Yeah, so Troy Renk, very interesting comment that he made about the cage rush, I thought, of Josh Allen. That point, and the other point about Bo Nix maybe running more in this one, John.
Yeah, and Bills Mafia will travel well here, but I agree. The Mile High is ready for some playoff football. All right, we're going to wrap things up here on Sports Talk Live Plus by talking about coaching moves. Mike Tomlin surprisingly out. Vic and I discuss his departure, what's next, and the other parts of this coaching carousel around the league when we return. Homestretch here on Sports Talk Live Plus. We've touched a lot about coaching openings around the league recently here. Mike Tomlin, the latest, stepping down as the Steelers head coach after 19 seasons, Vic. We kind of forecasted the possibility of this, but now that it has come to truth, what are your thoughts on Tomlin out after 19 years leading the Steelers?
Yeah, it's still a little hard to grasp. I mean, the idea that, you know, one of the iconic coaches in the league, most as tenured as he was, as successful as he was, getting this team to the postseason. But it's just a reminder that everybody has a shelf life in this league. We know Bill Belichick did. So why should we be surprised if Mike Tomlin or any other long-term guy, John Harbaugh, suddenly find themselves out of work?
Only 3 head coaches in the Steelers' history here, so not some change is very rare. What do you think is next for Tomlin, Vic?
I'm going to see him, and you're going to see him on TV. He's going to be with perhaps the guys from ESPN doing the pregame show or whatever, but he will join us in the talking head department.
Do you think he'll ever coach again?
I'm not sure. This stung him pretty well from people I know from Pittsburgh, talking to people there. But it wouldn't surprise me if he comes back. But all indications he will sit out a year. Interesting point: if he sits out a full year, he's eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame after 1 year of sitting out of the NFL.
Never had a losing season. What a remarkable run for Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. Change a-coming in the Steel City. Change for us here. Our usual Monday show you can find on Channel 2 at 7 o'clock Monday nights. It'll be shifting over right here to WGRZ Plus because of an NBA doubleheader. Broncos, Bills, 4:30 Saturday. Enjoy the game.